I won't deny it, I'm a Southsider. You don't wanna mess with me. Got the police looking for me. But I'm calm cause I'm smoking that CBD. Said I won't deny it, I'm a Southsider. You don't wanna mess with me. Got the police looking for me. But I'm chilling in the back of the VIP. Said we won't deny it, we are Southsiders. You don't wanna mess with us. Got the police looking for us. But there's nothing that they can't do. Cause you're chilling with the Blessed Life Podcast crew. The Blue Podcast, Piches Cabrones. Piches Cabrones. Feliz Domingo, mis amigos. Welcome to the Blue Podcast. I'm Brian Tierney. This is the Blessed Life University Podcast, the Blue Podcast for short. Today we're going to be talking about suicide awareness for the police. We're going to be talking about resilience as a general topic. We're going to define it, talk about what it means to us, and talk about some specific examples. We're going to be talking about self-care, journaling, gratitude, healing from childhood trauma. And at the end, Matt and I are going to be talking about the Ukrainian offensive right now, stuff that's going on with Putin, Russia, and nuclear threats, and also interest rate increases. Here with me to talk about all this today is Lizette Vargas.
Yes.
Tilsa Fernandez, and Matt Thomassen, also known as Mateo, are friends, and they were involved in a training session that was going on in their office, and they took like a story video on Facebook as the march was going by, and they said, "Oh, interrupting our training." Like, that's the mentality of like, this is a problem for us, and it wasn't even clear what the march was about. Mm-hmm. And there wasn't a lot of people involved, too, which is why I felt bad. It's like, this is a cause that I think we all need to be more invested in, is the people who are responsible for law and order in our community. Mm-hmm. And the reason that I believe law and order is important is because we're not going to have a good place. We're not going to have a good community, a safe community, to raise our families in and mm-hmm. to enjoy this beautiful short life that we have for 60, 70, 80 years if we're lucky, if we don't have law and order. So we have to have this social agreement in place that we're all going to abide by, and there has to be people tasked in charge with it, of those things, of enforcement of this law and order, and those people are the police. That's who we have here. And what I feel like is that we're in a bad place as a society right now, certainly in the city of Chicago, if the interests of those people, the police officers, and the people they serve in the community are not aligned. Instead, it's the other. They're the other. They're the bad guy. They're in a position where they're the enemy almost. Their days off are getting canceled. They're working 14-hour shifts, mm-hmm. dealing with tough stuff all the time, without enough training and counseling to help them get through this stuff. So when I see that some of my fellow people, maybe because they didn't know what it was about, saying that like, oh, they're interrupting our meeting, it's like, well, that's kind of the point, is to draw attention to this first of all, but also like, you shouldn't see it as an inconvenience that like somebody is trying to promote. Like, these people are human beings. So when you have a uniform on, you're a human being at the end of the day. You have the same hurts, you have the same, you deal with things, you deal with pain like everybody else does. And if it's that bad that that people are starting to commit suicide. So you told me yesterday, within the last month, 6 Chicago police officers have killed themselves. Mm-hmm. That's a crisis.
That's not good.
One is a lot.
Chicago.
2 is too many. 1 is too many. 2 is too many. 6 just in Chicago, and that was just in 1 month. We're not even talking about all the prior months past. And then on top of the suicides, just on-the-job injury, mm-hmm. from all sorts of stuff.
And then there's a high rate of retirement, too. They're all leaving.
It seems to be the trend. I mean, that's just kind of the general trend, just not just with police officers, but I understand more enforcement. Just in the city, in the state, mm-hmm. like people are leaving, like, and I don't know what we do as a people, like in this state, in this city, more specifically this city, to kind of right the ship. I mean, you're getting on board and trying to fight against that tide, but in terms of the general trajectory of the ship, is it sinking, and is it fixable? I don't know.
It's underwater right now.
Yeah.
The way I feel about it, but we need to get it back
just
up.
think fiscally the situation the city is in, just financially, in the government. Like I know just even back, I remember even back when we were in law school, they were saying like, oh yeah, we're not going to be able to meet our pension obligations. Like it's just, sorry, we don't have money. Like, I remember that was for like police and firefighters, but some years ago, and there was a whole kerfluffle over that. So it's a bad spot, I think, and I'm not sure like how we reorient the trajectory of like where we're going, or if we even can as people.
I think it's doable, but I
policy
think
change
change and right leadership
with both union and the city. The city just, they just want to employ people, but they don't really want to give benefits, rightfully so, because it increases like our taxes, right? But we need to take care of our men and women that we have out there as policemen.
Well, in the public relations of it is another thing, because if it, like I said, earlier, we're in a bad place if the very people that we task with enforcing our law and order are seen as an enemy. That we have to fight against that, because we although police officers are not always going to be there when you need them, right? We have to be at peace and comfortable with that situation, but it's about the best we can do. You know what I mean? That's why I also believe in the right of individuals to defend themselves and know how to do so well and responsibly, so that if there's not, we don't all get our own police officers assigned to us like we're the mayor or the president. So we have to be able to, number one, protect ourselves. But I think this is a theme that I see is so powerful, is having values as a society within an organization. It's like if we talk to a community and we ask them, first of all, let's talk about the community that you live in now. What don't you like about it? What's bad? What kind of community do you want to live in? What if you could have, most people, I think, even in the worst of neighborhoods, would really want a safe place to raise their children and enjoy their family time together, and be safe and have a good place for kids to go to school without having to worry about them so much. There's always going to be bad things that happen. You won't be able to protect against anything, but I think the community would say that that's what they want. So how do we align those things then? How do we involve the police, in this, maybe, or the citizens in this, in a way that we are productive, in a way that we are not failing, so that we all have to live in fear, and our officers, our fellow human beings, are exhausted and overworked and burdened and just hurting. You know what I mean? How can we align those interests of the community and the police together to build the place that we want to live in?
Well, I think like we discussed prior to we got rolling here, was I think somewhere in the trajectory of American law enforcement, and there was a shift. I don't know when exactly. It was a gradual shift, and like we were talking about, where police shifted from you got Mike the beat cop, he stops in at the diner or whatever, says hi, his first name, they're part of the community basically, as opposed to being the other, where they just kind of sit around in the patrol car and you don't know them. You don't know the cops around here. I have no clue. So that the whole thing about police being a part of the community kind of shifted to police being the other, their own entity, where they're like divorced and separate, and then the community started seeing them as the other, and I think that's where trust kind of went down, in terms of like the public's confidence in law enforcement, and vice versa, and just I think how law enforcement views the public. Because if the community is seeing the police as the other and the police seeing the community as the other, I mean, that's a disconnect. We have to integrate the police and the community where they're seen as a part of one another. And I think
they're one and the same.
Yeah, they're just the police are just an extension of your community. And shifting it to sort of that, because I feel like it, from what my parents have told me, they're older boomers, and back in the days of like even like say the 70s, I feel like there was when they were young adults, there was more of that sentiment, at least to the public, in terms of how they regarded the police and vice versa. So I don't know where that starts, but I think that would be helpful if we could kind of return to that, where the community and the police are one and the same, and they're not separate, distinct entities that view each other as separate and distinct. Because you have that, there's something in the human psyche where you view someone as the other, and I'm sure black folks can tell you all about that, like especially the older ones who grew up back in the day, where racism was worse than it is today, and segregation and whatnot, which was terrible. And that otherness mentality is extremely unhealthy and breeds division, and it forces people into almost their own subcultures. It's saw with Black America, where its own subculture developed because it was separate and pushed away from the rest of society. And you have that, like, that tribal human mentality. Oh, the other, they're different. We don't know about this guy. It's just something that's in our caveman brains that forms naturally when things are segmented and separate from each other. When people are segmented and separate from each other, even if they may live together, they're still distinct.
I'd like to hear from the people in the community as to what they want and how they think we should achieve it. Have values in place of, like, what is this community going to stand for? Is it going to be good independence and good family values and sports and healthy things and thriving businesses, and then figure out how to enact those things together, like basically like almost letting people choose the policing they want, and like you say, kind of make it more where the community and police are one. The challenge in large cities like Chicago is that you have to do this at scale, and the community is always going to outnumber the number of police officers, right? For an entire city, you have only a few thousand officers that are in charge with keeping law and order amongst about 3 million people.
Right.
So it's different in small town America, and even then probably we have this romantic notion of, like, the old beat cops who go around saying, hey, Mike, how you doing? Or, hey, you want some food? Or he brings over something, whatever, and, this and that. But even in some of the small towns, they're probably like, fucking sheriff so-and-so or the chief of police guy's an asshole or whatever, right? But at least it's smaller and they know who he is. They don't, like here, you have no idea. But I think deciding values and what we want, and then having regularly scheduled connections between the community and policing, because right now it's, you only see them when there's a problem, you know what I mean? And it's like, if you knew that every Saturday or the third Saturday of the month or twice a month you have this little town hall where the police officers will be there, or they have some kind of organized meeting where we're continually trying to work at these goals and have metrics in place to judge where we're at. And another topic is the need for training of police officers. So Jocko Willink is a famous Navy SEAL, and he, in his opinion, said that police officers should be in training about 20% of the time they're on the job. That would mean that if you're working 5 days, then one of those days is, let's say, training from 9 to 3, and then maybe counseling from 3 to 5 or something like that, to make this holistic for them as well. Because as you mentioned earlier, before the podcast, is that the reason that sometimes things get to such a bad place where a police officer is shooting somebody is because just not being able to de-escalate a situation. Oh. Another situation there, if it's a valid threat, is that sometimes when you're threatened and you know that you're not going to be able to win a fight, the only way to really save yourself is reach for the gun. Because, if you're overpowered by a larger individual or multiple individuals, sometimes that's all you can do, and you don't know where that's going to go. We have to acknowledge the fact that police officers carry around the power to kill in their hands or on their sides, and if that is taken away from you, it can be used against you. So there's so many things that you have to calculate. We have to acknowledge that the decisions that people are making in real time are very fucking scary ones. You know what I mean? And the situations that happen are sad. We don't need to get into the specifics right now. We can talk about this on another podcast of the children who are shot by police.
And you see, Brian, we forget that you gotta bring that, what you just said, that trait of thought into every call, every day. plus dealing with the trauma that you see, plus going home, what she said, going home and still being a normal human being. Imagine having to go to for you to come to your job and having to decide in a split second what you should do. And that decision is probably going to end his life or your life every day.
Yeah, you got to be, and it's hard to be in Super Bowl game time mindset every day, and because things can pop off so quickly. And this isn't all just on police. We're making it sound like it's all on police, but it's also on the citizenry to recognize that. Who was it? I think it was Sam Harris. He said, I don't necessarily agree with how he framed it, but he's like, when you interact with a police officer as a citizen on a traffic stop, like he said, you have to kind of approach it like a police officer is a potentially lethal entity that if they misinterpret something, they're human too. If they misinterpret it, they get something wrong, or you make actions or words or aggression towards them, they could perceive that as lethal force, because when a gun is in the table, lethal force, if a gun is in the situation, lethal force is on the table. And the citizenry has to be aware of that if like you don't like a cop, you're in a confrontation with them, they're trying to like break up a fight at a bar, and you're like, fuck this guy, like, I'm gonna give him a crack and whatever. A cop doesn't know that if you knock him out, you're not going to take his gun and shoot him with it. That's true. Because that happens. And so
when people are on drugs or they're in a fit of rage, they'll do crazy shit.
Yeah, but I'm talking, even if you're sober or whatever, you as a citizen, if you're irate or whatever and you want to fucking scrap it out with a cop, bad idea, because that cop doesn't know what your intentions are when you decide to put hands on a cop. So, people are like, oh, cops are trigger happy, blah, blah, blah. Some, yes, but you have to look at it from the cop's perspective. You don't know this individual's intentions when he's scrapping it out with you, like you're duking it on the street.
If he gets that gun away from you, you're
toast. Yeah, so it's not all in the cops, too. It's also in the citizenry to I think, just be reasonable and understand that there is lethal force in play when you're dealing with a gun on the table. So I just think that's important to go in and just also as the police officer, in terms of, like you said, with de-escalation and whatnot, I see this a lot in some of the videos I see. Like, you're going into the situation, it's really, I think so many situations have been improved by de-escalation, because I've seen this even myself personally on traffic stops, like where a cop just comes in with 100-mile-an-hour attitude, where they're all up in your shit. Like, looks like you watched Too Furious, Too Fast, Too Fast, Too Furious too many times, boy. I literally had a cop say that to me. Like, looks like you watched Too Fast, Too Furious too many times. Like, you sit in the mirror and practice this shit or something. Like you're in a movie, or, oh, you ready to ride the lightning, boy? It's like, dude, you're coming into it with an aggressive attitude, and that puts people on edge too. And when people are on edge, their anxiety gets up, their blood pressure spikes, their heart rate spikes, and so they're less liable to think rationally. They're more liable to like move quickly. Or I even saw a video where like a cop asked for ID, and the guy reached to go to his pocket too quick, and he got shot because he thought he was pulling for. So can I see your
ID? It happens all the time,
and he does this reflexively, and it's like it's like when you come into a situation as a police officer too hot at 100 miles an hour, you're putting that person on edge, and you're just escalating towards the point of where force is going to be used. And I think it's important on both the police and the citizenry to just like try to be as rational and level-headed as possible in a police interaction, and to try and not get it to that level where the conflict is just increased by your attitude and how aggressive you are going into it.
That needs to be part of definitely the training.
Should teach that in schools too. Not even police training. In schools, you should have like a public.
I agree.
You should put this in like just a life skills class.
Outside of the home.
Teenagers need to learn this in school. They really do. How to interact with police
and then
officers.
It just comes down to basic core values, like Ryan was saying. Like, you gotta be compassionate for each other, have empathy for each other, both sides.
Yeah.
Because that's when that will happen. Like, okay, you know what? I understand maybe why he's feeling this way from both sides. But now it's all about ego. It's all about, just, but why? You're just assuming that I committed a crime. Like, we don't stop to think about both sides from both ways.
Right.
Yeah, definitely, the people in charge of enforcing law definitely need to be... Well, first of all, we need our best and brightest in those fields, and the people that are passionate about it, and they need to know how to de-escalate as well. But the flip side of that coin is also how are you going to react as a citizen? So that's why I feel, and I know people, I'm like, I believe in the power of education, so I believe, like, there are some, like, basic life skills courses that we really need to teach our children, and one of those is dealing with an authority figure outside the home, because, like, when you're younger, it's like, you know, it's your mom or dad, you listen to them, right? You got to, like, do what you're told. But the person on the street is like, you're not my fucking mom or dad. Like, I don't have to listen to what the fuck you're saying. Like, who the fuck are you? You know what I mean? And like, or who are you to tell me this? Why should I comply with that? Or, like you said, when they come in at 100 miles an hour, feelings and all these things are contagious, so you align with where they're at. Yeah. Or you start making quick movements. We saw a classic video when we were in law school. We were watching it together, not as part of law school, but this was in the South. Officer standing back, and he said something like license and registration, and the dude makes a quick move into the car in the center console, and the guy freaks and thinks right away that he's going for a gun, and so he, you know, starts unloading on the guy. Luckily, it wasn't lethal. I think he got shot in the ass, and the guy literally, he's in pain, and he's sitting there in shock probably from the shot, and he's like having this conversation with the officer. It's like, you shot me, man. He's like, you shot me, like, in my ass, like and not in a funny way. He's like, you shot me.
He was like, man, incredulous.
He's like, I'm hit.
I was getting my ID. What the fuck?
Yeah, like he reached in, thought he was complying.
I think if we were
it's the way he complied.
If we start changing, like, hey, make sure you put your license and registration above, you know.
Keep your hands where they can be seen. Don't make
deliberate
quick movements. Yes,
like,
sir.
I'm reaching
my license is in the glove box. If you'd like to take it, if not, I'll reach very slowly for it. I'm not trying to, you know, ma'am, yes ma'am, no ma'am, or whatever. You know, I'm trying to comply here. So what we need to teach people is to be comfortable with their feelings and not react on their feelings, not to be reactionary at all times, because, you know, if you're trying to comply, most of the time you're going to try to do it quick, right? Yeah. But sometimes you need to slow down a situation, and part of the escalation is slowing things down so you could be more in control of them. And to come back to an earlier point, it's like a box of chocolates. You never know where you're going to get, right, when you're a police officer. You have no fucking idea when you're responding to a call of any type of situation. First of all, is this real, or is there fraud here going on? Is somebody trying to, like, right, they call in a call for something, and really there's people waiting to fucking shoot you or rob you or jump you or whatever the fuck, right? They call in a lesser call, and then when you get there,
it's an ambush or something.
It's an ambush or something. You have no idea. Or you have no idea where the ambush is coming from. So, like, having to deal with that, we need officers who are very situationally aware and are able to read energy and slow things down so they can assess the situation first and then make the best decision possible. So whatever resources we can put into, you know, allowing officers to assess situations, energy, and act on it, the better, I feel.
I feel like it's really important to get in tune with yourself to read that. You could honestly read when there's an environmental change, when you're in tune with your own energy, your chakras are on point, you've grounded yourself early in the morning. If you go anywhere, even your parents' house, you know, when they had arguments, the energy feels so different. So when you're in tune with that, and I don't think they teach that enough, like learning how to trust yourself, but the first download that you get doesn't necessarily belong to you. It belongs to, like, your spirit guides. It belongs to the divine. You know, if you're getting all these intuitive downloads, learning how to listen to yourself.
I think another thing we need to do is, I feel like it's a goddamn outright responsibility we have, is to humanize police. And maybe that's highlighting a different officer each week through social media and like showing them that, like, these people are part of the community. He had, you know, and it's like sometimes you obviously want to be careful about the details that you divulge, but just showing them that, like, these are family people too, and these are what they enjoy outside of this. These are the things that they like, and this is how they fit into the community, like you. Like, their kids go to this school. And I'm not saying divulge where people's kids go to school, but I'm saying, like, they're in the community too.
I feel like you know what, they are doing that. I know that
because they're one-dimensional right now. I feel like we view the piece in one dimension when we need to see the human side of it.
They do. I know they have a football team, the Knights, CPD Knights, and they have different football teams, and they go out to the communities and they do, like, football for younger kids, and those are really good interactions that the police, but realistically speaking too, like, cops can't take out a lot of time away from their family to do community outreach. It should be on the dime while you're working, not as a volunteer. I mean, volunteering is really good, but for example, parents that have 4, 5, 6 kids who are police officers, you can't spend a lot of your personal time in doing outreach. It should be on the job more so.
I agree with that too. Yeah, I mean, that's not to say that you can't be involved on your days
Right.
off or have these hobbies and passions or part of events that you'll be part of. But yes, all this stuff should be part of the job, because it's the schedule that puts order on disorder and chaos. And if it's a good scheduling in and of itself is a good habit. Jesus, I'm right. I'm doing all the things I should. I'm saying all the things I should be doing. Matt, you're gonna have to hold me accountable to, on the job with the attorney stuff. I know how to do it. I just never implemented it. I can't be that sad story. But yes, it has to be part of the job so that it's a good habit and it's routine and it's set in place. It's cemented in time. It's predictable. And that's not to say you can't shift things around and adjust, but bringing that into the good habits and structure and scheduling into policing.
Yeah, but I agree with that idea. I actually, for the recruitment, because we go every Monday and Wednesdays to prepare for, and this is optional, you don't have to do it, to prepare for the power test. And the CPD created a recruitment team now because, they're in dire need. And at these practice sessions, they have a cycling group of recruiters that go. And so because I've been going for such a long time, like I've been able to, speak to several of them.
Motorcycle? Motorcycle?
No, for CPD.
Cycling, like they're trainers.
Yeah,
like,
they're trainers.
Oh.
They're not the same ones all the time.
Forgive me. I'm tired. It's been
It's a long night
But
last night for
I
us.
thought you meant like cycling, like a group of cyclers or something like that. I thought you were talking about group. I didn't mean to interrupt. Continue.
So I did actually suggest that idea for the recruitment team, that they should do a video of recruiters that come in from the beginning to the end of the process, and then also police officers to like kind of record their daily lives after what they do when they're police officers, so that we can connect with our police officers. But I don't know if you know that we actually do have like community policing. So that's what they call the
There's an acronym for it.
I think it's beta
Positive touch
something. Police
something.
officers, police community.
Positive interaction.
Yeah,
It's changed over time because
Yeah.
what I think you see on the police cars, and I don't know if it's still there, is it's called like CAPS, Community Oriented Policing System or something like that. But I wish they wouldn't change that. That's a beautiful acronym, and we just need to fill up that cup and make it more valuable, and rich. Because it should be community-oriented policing, and like we said earlier, that people are one and the same. Yeah.
So that's the reason why I decided to journal my journey, because hopefully by the time I get there, I wanna talk about the whole process of becoming, being a civilian, to my experience of seeing what law enforcement was to me. And of course, obviously, I would have to get it approved, right? But those are that's
awesome.
That's what I'm planning on doing, and getting into the force. And that's why I journal. That's why I document every stage of the process. What it means to me. How is it developing my mindset? How is it growing me? What I believe we should do different. So that's why I felt the need that I can't just sit. Because while we were doing the awareness walk, there was some group of people that were encouraging. They were like, I'm so happy you guys are doing this. And my answer to them was, come join us. Because it's not just enough to be in the sideline and say, let's go. You gotta believe in it, get in it. And that's what I'm doing. Like, I'm not just gonna sit there and say, okay, what's the problem, or go to these walks, and like I want to be involved.
The solution.
Yeah, I want to be part of the solution.
The embodiment of the solution.
And in order for us to fix it, well, like for me, I want to document everything that's happening to me, my mental development. How is it changing? Because that's the only way that we're gonna, in real time.
I think another thing that would really help is you sharing your diaries. I hope that you find the success that you are looking for and that you become a member of the police department. And to share, like, what was this week like a video diary, or like a a short thing, probably shorter than podcasts like this, but to be like, this is what happened to me this week on a job. This is how I felt about it. Here's what I think could be better, and what I think the policy should reflect. Now, that does make waves, but also, like, I know that as a police officer, you're probably limited in how much things you can discuss. Now, that's not to say you have to get into specifics. We talked in generalities earlier. In the law, when we discuss things, our fact pattern, if you want to break it down to summarize it for a class or when you're talking about it in front of other people, is, the driver goes into the room, and it turns out as he enters, there's this problem with the door. And so we're not talking about the specific names or locations. We're just telling you what happened. We're presenting a general story. And it's crazy. I just had deja vu. I feel like, in life, it's weird how I feel like I've went through this before with these souls in this room, with you looking at me in that position. And this was a dream I had probably a long time ago. Not necessarily you specifically, but very interesting feeling to have here in front of you guys. Yeah. But in any event, to allow people to really know what you went through and how you thought about it, and how that affects who you are as a person. Now, let me ask you, how close are you to becoming a police officer?
I was going to ask that.
So the process, believe it or not, see, this is another thing that as a civilian, we don't know, right? We're over here saying, oh, well, they're just getting anyone.
Mass recruited and recruiting anyone off the street.
Sign up and we'll give you a friggin' iPhone with the Chicago Police Department.
Because that's what people are making it seem like.
It kind of is getting that way now.
And then, so the process says first you have to obviously take the entrance exam. So the entrance exam is a mixture of, like, basic math skills, basic reading skills, and then it has like scenario questions. Like, they'll give you like scenes, and then you have to. It was kind of. I thought it was pretty cool. And then
like role playing.
Yeah, like they'll give you scenes of, like, you went to this call. What would you prioritize first? They analyze your ability to analyze situations, and so the test was pretty interesting. So I wrote about the test, and then after that you take your first power test, and for that first power test is to kind of give you a baseline. See, I even like how they even thought about that. I thought that was amazing.
Explain what a power test is.
So a power test is they have like a set standard of certain running time that you're supposed to make. Physical assessment. Physical assessment.
PT test.
And I even like how they put that in, how, like, to see where you're at. To see
evaluating.
Yes, to see what you gotta do. And I knew that was gonna be my problem. So because I was self-aware of what my needs were, immediately I got myself into. And these were all things that I looked for. It wasn't because they told me. Like, I went online and looked through the entire website of CPD, see what they have to offer, what their whole deal is. So that's how I discovered the power sessions. So then I assigned myself up to those because I knew I needed to work on that. I knew I was not a runner. So this is
pre-academy training.
Yeah, this is pre-academy.
This is good. That's good. You need to be doing that type of stuff, because that honestly that plays into what we were talking about earlier. It's like when situations do get out of hand, a lot of it is because a lot of the ones that I've seen is just anecdotal evidence, because police don't know how to handle themselves with their empty-handed skills. And that's why I think we were discussing earlier, like, another thing that would be helpful is, like, just jiu-jitsu, grappling, basic grappling, be super effective. You're already coming in at a disadvantage, potentially having to go toe-to-toe against males in the field. And that's definitely the right idea, to be as physically competent as you can.
Because training allows you to control time better.
Plus, it's hard to move.
You might not be the stronger person, but if you made the first move, you know how to be proactive in a situation where you're not letting your fears or your emotions at the moment blind you from acting, which is another point you made earlier, is putting feelings aside to be able to act. It allows you to manage the clock better and to make better decisions. So you might not be the stronger person, but yes, if you were able to throw that first punch or, do this move ahead of time, you've changed things for the better.
Definitely.
And that should be paid for by your employer, by the way.
Yeah,
that shouldn't
absolutely.
be something that should come out of your pocket.
She's going to become a police officer, and we need you to head the police officers union going forward.
You know what? I tried to
Yes.
apply for the union side, but they weren't. I guess it wasn't something that they were looking for because I'm big on union. I came from the Teamsters, and policy change is like one of my biggest lines of expertise, and how to vote for them, how to make change, how to recruit people, and all that stuff. But I would love to actually work for the union side of it.
I'm sure there's room for that if you really try it. I just don't know how.
I
We'd
think
have to talk to them
you
about
first
it.
have to become a police officer and then kind of.
I was just gonna say that because I see the reason why you would need that requirement because it's kind of like
you
what
need
he
to
was,
understand
yes.
what police officers go through
Yes.
hand in hand every single day, and then obviously work with the field and assess the needs, and then get obviously police officers to support you, bring it on to the board meetings, petition for that to be implemented. Then you need to vote on it. So there's like a lot of elements in order to make these changes for these police officers. But when you have a president like he is, he's not all bad, to be honest. He's not all bad. He really stuck it.
John Catanzara, is that his name?
I don't know what's his name, but
Matt, could you look
one
up real
thing I
quick who
did
the
like about him,
uh,
to be honest,
head
is
of
the
the
fact
Chicago
that he
police union
stuck
Yeah.
by the police officers on the whole vaccination thing. He's like, absolutely not. And when he stands, the thing is, when
correct.
the union goes and stands for you, they really do mean well. Are there bad apples? Absolutely. But bypassing that, we do need more benefits for our police officers, and that's in the wellness. In addition to pay, there needs to be a wellness element into everything that we do.
Definitely.
If we want to make changes, like that is particularly, I would love to have, instead of community, hangout areas, meditation, a place where someone can come in, not necessarily geared towards by religion. Religion for me has always been like, it's a controlling mechanism. Why can't it just be universal where people come in and they're just in tune with themselves? They could journal. Journal is like one of those amazing things that I absolutely love to do because you can assess your own self. But anyways, I don't want to get on that tangent. But I definitely see how you would be such a beautiful impact into the law enforcement, not only just doing your job, the day-to-day activities, from someone who does have experience resiliencies, overcame so much that you can easily help people that that you come across with that are experiencing domestic violence. Like, how do you get out of that? And that's something that our city has so much of, and economics has nothing to do with it. People often think that women go through it that are that are in the poverty. No, it hits in different areas. Poor, middle, and high, doesn't matter, but you will have that impact. And for you to respond to a victim and be like, hey, I was there in your shoes, and yes, you can overcome that. You know what I mean? That's a huge impact. And I would love to think that when they're recruiting new officers or new trainees, that they're looking for a diverse, because a lot of times if certain questions that you answer on there disqualify you based on your honesty in there, and that should be part of it. Like, have you overcome personal adversity? Yes, and we need more officers like that, but healed officers. We don't want we don't need new trainees.
You know what, I'm glad that you talked about that, because it kind of ties in with where I'm at in the process right now. So I completed the entire part of the process. So I was supposed to start the academy July 29th. But because what you just said now, the psych test is a group of questions, which I think it was about 900 questions that I had to answer.
That's a lot of questions.
And you sit...
She's passionate.
Who is passing psych exams? Wait a minute.
Exactly, bunch of psychopaths.
You have to lie a little bit on there.
Be like, yes, I kick puppies. Like, this is our guy.
So
Yeah, they're not going to be that open and obvious about it, but that's bizarre. That's weird.
We need people that actually have overcome adversity, that can relate to the calls that you're getting.
I'm glad you're saying that, because that test does not measure anything of that.
Yeah, no. I've gotten stopped a few times by a few officers, and interactions, like you said, are always different, but you can really tell the ones that really do not relate at all. Like, just don't fucking relate at all. And it's like, what are you doing?
Some of them might not have been exposed to diversity enough in their life.
Exactly.
Prior to taking the job.
One of the officers asked me, like, this must be a trend with, like, the Mexicans.
What?
Excuse me?
The Mexican.
The Mexicans. Excuse me?
Really?
Like the Brady Bunch, the Mexicans.
Yeah,
The
just
Mexican.
The Mexican.
The Mexicans. I'm like, well, I'm multicultural, but had to, like, who's on that one? Like,
Another thing that I think should be brought into officer training, and it probably already is. Here I am saying this. What you need to do is actually ask an officer about whenever there is training after the academy, what it includes, is something they call in the military after-action review. So there's so many good breakdown videos of situations on, like, YouTube and stuff. If you want to see, like, a fight, like, okay, when he stepped left here, a lot of his weight was there and he wasn't able to shift in time, and that kick caught him in the side of the head. And that's how that, literally, when you watch a football game, which I probably will do later when I finish my Texas, boring procrastination.
can you do mine too?
You get, like, John Madden, right? Lord, rest in peace, I think he passed away. But one of those guys, they stop it down, freeze frame it, start circling stuff in yellow, and tell you, like, what happened there that allowed this to happen, or how that they could have done something better. Like, I think police officers' skills need to be sharpened like a knife in regards to what they can do to improve. And fundamentals of policing have to be at the core of that, like fundamentals of the physical response process or the mental response process. But literally, the after-action review where they can break it down doesn't even have to be within your own department, because you don't want... You have to go, like, all...
No.
Oh, okay, go to the bathroom. Is the breaking things down to show what you can do better. So it doesn't have to be within your department. It could be from another place, another department in another city or another town or another district. So you can see, like, on body cam, like, look at... I'm going to stop this right here. You see how that escalated really quickly. But what if we tried this, right? Or in a similar situation, they handled it this way and it came out differently. To really break down the process and show somebody this is how quickly it can escalate if that's how you're going to respond to somebody, or if you're going to take that course of action.
You know, and there's people out there kind of doing that, like on the internet. I think this also plays into the public's perception of police, which can kind of, maybe if it was better portrayed or more accurately and holistically portrayed just everything that police do. Like, there's this guy YouTube channel I watch called Donut Operator. He's a former law enforcement officer. I've seen his videos. And he does, like, police shooting breakdowns and just kind of, like, does basically after action reviews. Like, this is what happened. You know, this is kind of what could have gone better. And it's just some of these situations are really good teachable moments just for officers to look at in terms of how these things were handled. And a lot of these situations were handled very well by officers, but you don't see that in the media. In the news media plays a responsibility in this by, I think, fairly reporting police incidents and police interaction, because you don't see, I mean, some of the stuff, what you see on, like, YouTube is not what you see on the mainstream media. They show you the George Floyds, which should be shown. We should see when police officers fail, but we should also see when they succeed. And more often they succeed, I believe, than they fail. But that's not being portrayed in the mainstream news media, and so that's also hurting the public's perception of officers. A lot of these, I mean, it's crazy. Like, if all you did was watch CNN, I understand why you'd have a negative, image of the police. What they're not showing you is, like, when police arrived to a scene of, like, a murderous madman who's just killed, like, his wife and started just shooting indiscriminately at people, lit his house on fire, ammunition is exploding in the background from, like, the stockpile ammunition he has. He's shooting at random people, and there's just one cop on scene with just his sidearm, and, he domes this guy from, like, 50 meters away under fire. And it's like, wow, that was really impressive. You got literally, like, things on fire going around in the background. You don't know what's going on. There's shots fired. There's people in the street who are bleeding out, and all of a sudden lead is coming your way from this psycho, and it's just you and him. And
is that a real scenario?
That is a real scenario.
That's why I thought you brought it up. Yeah.
And that is what also needs to be portrayed on the media. Like, holy shit, this cop one-shotted this guy under fire as he's getting all these things are going off. Like, like houses are burning, people are dying, lead's coming your way, and they still perform under pressure. You don't see that. You just see the George Floyds. Again, which you should see, but you also need to see the guys that are, like, just going above and beyond, like, doing, like, real hero shit. And that happens more frequently than I think a lot of the public realizes. and they need to be made aware of that, and that would, I think, give them renewed respect for what some of these cops have to encounter, because some of these situations, I mean, they're like Hollywood, hairy as hell, like hellacious scenarios that they just drive into. You're all of a sudden like it's upon you, and also scenarios just not even that you necessarily even get called to as a police, but like situations that randomly happen to you. One of the craziest ones I saw recently was a cop was on a traffic stop, just a regular traffic stop, talking to the driver or whatever. Another car pulls up, and a guy in like full battle rattle kit comes out with a tactical hatchet and rushes the police officer, like swinging at him with a hatchet, just randomly on a traffic stop. Just pulled up, decided to attack the police officer with a hatchet. Cop dumps like 5 rounds into him, as he's backpedaling. The guy goes down and dies. But it's crazy out there, and those situations are not highlighted, not just in terms of like being just called to a situation, but just situation that's happened to you just as a police officer. A random psycho comes at you with a hatchet. It's nuts. So
one thing that Matt touched on, and sorry, that while you're going, was the responsibility of the media in all this.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. They've been quite irresponsible in terms of fairly portraying what it
true.
is in terms of to be a police officer.
We don't control the media anymore. Like, it's just one big...
Also, COVID was a perfect storm of, people who were isolated, and then as a result, feeling anxiety, depression, anger, fear. Sorry. Anyway, that magnified the George Floyd incident because people had a lot of time on their hands, and negative feelings linger longer than positive ones. So it'd be nice if we had a fair balance, like thing, like, look, this was something terrible done, but then also have to highlight like something that was like a great story in the community where a police officer.
True. We don't do that anymore. You don't hear about it in the news unless it's extremely bad. You hear less than the 1% of the things that are happening, out there, and they're all negative.
They do highlight some of the good stuff. I'll give them that. I do see some
Really?
blurbs about like the police officer coming in with a teddy bear or something, or whatever it may be, or just like helping out in some way. You do see it, but the problem is that the bad incidents are the ones that are magnified the most.
Because also, like, the narrative of our politicians, like, they're trying to get votes, they're trying to get...
We can do it better by doing this.
Yeah. So, the narrative right now is just to shift blame on, the police. Should we take a break?
If you're pushing yourself
that happened
too
to
far
me.
when you don't have the energy to do it
that
anymore.
Actually happened to me last week. Like, I had to take a whole week off to just... I've had such an increase in weddings right now, and then everybody all of a sudden wanted to do a rehearsal, and it's like, I'm not set up for rehearsals, people. Like, stop.
You gotta charge extra for that shit.
I do charge extra, but still, I mean, it's kind of like it's not worth it if I'm not getting the full payment. So if I'm charging $375 for 15 minutes of my time, and we're doing rehearsal for a whole hour, I mean,
it's in proportion. Really.
It's not, yeah. But anyways, I did it. It's just too much because now I have, I'm a bum Monday through Friday. I look like a bum, and then the weekends I look pretty, because I'm out and about.
I think you look pretty all the time, but
Thank you.
But yes.
But yeah, like I'm on mommy mode, meal prepping, doing this, getting the kids here, getting the kids there. I just can't, it's like now I have to do a rehearsal, and I don't want to look like a complete, like a bum rolling out of the street. Like, oh wait, this is the person marrying us.
Like, I don't know about this one.
That whoop strap can be very helpful because I'll give you a really good example. For UFC fighters, so I think this was Cody Garbrandt. I can't remember, and I think there's another fighter with a similar story. They, fighters are mentally tough people, right? Like, you're making a decision to go into something that has dire physical consequences one way or the other in your favor or against you. But those people are already mentally tough, but they're physically and mentally tough. So what happened was he was looking at his whoop strap, and he was looking at the results, and he's like, why am I not recovered? He's like, my recovery was at like 0% or 1% from day to day. And he kept on training and training and training because he's just mentally fucking tough and physically, like you said, setting aside your feelings. Like, that's like a David Goggins thing where it's like, it kind of setting aside the physical consequences of just like, but mentally forcing yourself to do it by making the decision. Anyway, turns out he had COVID. So he's fucking training hard as
While
fuck.
he has COVID.
Not recovering at all.
Makes sense.
Because he's had some issues. I don't know if he's ever going to be the same fighter that he was, which is unfortunate. Sometimes life, your body changes and things like that. But he was champion for a while.
Wow.
And he was training hard as hell when he wasn't fully recovered. But the whoop strap told him, man, he's like, I was wondering why my recovery wasn't coming back. And then he went and got a COVID test. And he had fucking COVID, and he had been training like that. You know what I mean? People were getting it here and there in the gym. Somebody would get COVID, they leave for a while. He had no idea he had it and was just depleting his body and not recovering properly.
Did he feel different, or was it just?
I think he felt shitty. He was just able to power through it.
Yeah.
So the thing is, when you get COVID and you're a person that eats well and you're working out, like you don't get the effects so bad. I mean, you don't feel as good, but yeah.
He started finding out because I think he was getting blood clots. He said he had a lot of blood clots, like maybe as much as 15 or something over the course of different times. So they'd really have to keep it careful.
Those aspirin, baby.
It didn't help that he kept on training. It made it worse. So my point in telling all that was just to tell you, if you can get on one of those, like I said, I already got some bullshit subscriptions that I don't use, and I'm just basically paying these people money for nothing. That's why I don't like subscriptions, and it's like a payment trap. Why does everything have to be a subscription nowadays? Like back in the day, you bought the software and it was good for a few years, and then you get another one later. But now it's like you're paying them every single month.
It's called the Whoop strap.
I think it's the Whoop strap. Yeah, the Whoop strap.
I need a Whoop strap.
Matt is gonna be our Jamie, and he's gonna check real quick. I think it's
Jamie.
WOOP or WHOOP, and you do have to pay a subscription, but it tells you all sorts of things: the quality of your sleep, your recovery after workouts, monitors all the vitals of your health and all that, and tells you all about how they all work together.
Reach your goals with Whoop 4.0.
I felt like I was very lethargic last week. Like I couldn't focus on my creative writing to write beautiful love story ceremony. Even though my couples loved them, they're like, "Oh my god, it was so cute." Everybody was crying. I didn't feel like I was my normal loving self. I'm like, I'm just typing away.
They're so happy. They loved each other so much.
After 20 beautiful years,
great. 2
amazing souls are now uniting as one, and I'm just like, I couldn't get into my like if I always think when I'm writing, I always think about like the audience. How are they listening to me? Is my voice, and then I'll read it like out loud. Is my voice, is my energy where it needs to be? And my energy was not there at all last week, and I'm like, I'm not doing CrossFit this week. I'm eating fucking well, but I was in my sauna, like just sweat the shit out of your system right now, holding my crystals, like.
I think I need a sauna session today, for Christ.
Yeah, we need to sweat the demons out.
There's a place, I don't know if it's still open, but in Summit there's a sauna house or a bath house over there. Can't remember the name, Imperial or something, I think it's called.
And by sweat the demons out, I just mean me doing intense cardio, basically. That's probably
I do need to exercise badly, dude. I deprived myself yesterday and today. Today, of course, I'm a little sleep, and then you're coming here to get ready. Yesterday, I just was trying to focus on my taxes and get it out of the way so that we could go out and enjoy Oktoberfest. But in any event, I guess we'll kind of wind down. Matt and I might wrap for a bit longer on the current event stuff, but we did cover the police suicide awareness. We're hoping that people's feelings change regarding the police, and we are going to work toward changing that ourselves by doing stuff like this, promoting awareness, by being involved. And my schedule is a crazy one. Like, I have more things to do than time to do them, but that's the story for a lot of people. And it's funny because I feel like every time I tell that to people now, it's like, well, this is life in modern society. Yeah. We're all going through it. But Matt knows from working with me, he can testify that like there's always something we could be doing, and it's constantly, there's a lot of emotion involved and all that. We deal with a lot of human psychology, even though we're working with a business transaction. Like, I wish people could divorce their fucking feelings from this to achieve a result. But whatever, anyway, we have a lot of shit we deal with all the time. But I would like to be more involved. Like, if I'm going to be involved, I want it to be in a worthy cause, and I think marching along with folks like that, or not necessarily marching, because some people get pissed off just because you're slowing down traffic, but maybe a sidewalk march, or maybe whatever. My point is, I would like to get involved in those activities and those events, so that like I can be a part of it too. I don't want to be just over here also commentating, but making donations or donating time.
Yeah.
To be involved, because my friend is a Marine, and he said you get the government you deserve. So it's like basically saying like like if you're going to sit back and let it happen, if you don't try
true.
to work with others to make a change or to yourself get involved and to try to do it, you know, it's all talk and no action. So keep us all here updated on upcoming events.
I'd like to provide Reiki sessions for like police officers and like especially the ones that have gone through traumatic stuff, you know, or calls, because I mean part of like the suicide prevention is like monitoring all of that and providing, you know, the resources too. It's not like, hey, suicide prevention, like what can we do part of the you know, help.
Well, my intention is obviously I don't want to just be, you know, out policing. I want to get into the leadership part of it, and so that's why it's important for me to experience what's going on. That's why I journal it, because then once I'm there where I want to be, where the decisions are being made, then I can use what my experience or what I see in other officers, and then I bring in ideas like this, right, into play. And so, by the way, John was there at the walk, and so I did get a chance to talk to him and kind of get the feel of like what's going on within everything that's happening. And I did, because we were talking about different ideas too, and I told him that I think that they should make it where they should make it mandatory for police officers to have workout sessions. And he says that they're actually working on creating that, like, mandatory, where officers, because there is a direct correlation with physical fitness and mental health.
Hell yeah.
So I told him, you know, what are you guys currently doing? So we did discuss that. And he does seem to be, again, that's why I don't judge people from out here. Like, I actually have to talk to them and see who they are as a person for me to form a judgment. So, you know, we did talk about, you know, physical fitness being mandatory, because again, that's something that I journaled in my journal, like how different I felt after 7 months of going, in addition to what I do outside of what those 2 sessions, that how it really helped me in my mindset. And so I felt like that should be something that officers should be mandatory.
Definitely.
However, they do have this power test that they do give them a financial incentive to do. I don't know if it's yearly, but I know it's coming up because they closed up our sessions on Mondays and Wednesdays for the whole month of October, because that's what they're doing. They're doing the power test for existing officers. And if they pass it, they get a financial incentive.
That's nice.
Well, incentives are good to get things done. You spoke to John Catanzara, the president of the Chicago Police Union. How would you summarize your experience of having talked with him? Like, how did you feel about it? What did you think of him as a person?
Well, again, I watch people. I'm a people watcher. I watch what you do, not what you say. So I did watch a lot of his character. Again, I didn't look him up. I just knew who he was by his face, but I don't want to create an image of him before I've met him. That's why I don't do it. I don't look up what the public says about a person.
So how did you feel about him?
So I thought he was very humble. I introduced myself to him like I do all the time when I'm at a community organizing event or wherever I'm at. I always like to make friends. I'm very social. And I thought he was a very humble person. As a matter of fact, like he was helping Robert a lot with things. Just him being there says a lot about him.
To take the time out.
No, not just there, because I want to say this. When we got to the district, the first 2 actually not even the first district, the alderman was there, the people the politicians need to also be walking with us, just like how John did. Yeah. Be a leader by example. Don't just mouth it out. You know, the officers...
They're taking pictures at
yes, so that they can come out as if they participated.
Well, yeah, because another thing is that participating will allow them to better assess the views of their constituents about how they feel about all this, but also, you know, see if the perception of police is that bad, like, to know that they have to make a change, like, and if they will say mean things to the people who are marching along over something like this, like, are they going to do it when the politicians are there too? And if the politicians see that, like, then they know that they do have a real problem on their hands.
But what I mean to say by that is that when you're out here, it kind of felt like a sales pitch. And if I see it, the police officers feel it. You cannot be out there saying we support you when it feels like a sales pitch.
Oh yeah,
that's politicians 101.
Yeah.
It's
right. Just getting their face out there, but that's one thing with Union. What's his name again?
John Catanzara.
John. Whether you like what he says or not, he stands his ground, and that's what makes him like amazing. And he stands and he backs his police officers. And I didn't see a lot of union presidents outside of Local 705 that actually stood up for their members the way he did, and he was not caving in. So that's one thing that for police officers to come in and to feel that backing from their union. We can say all day long, like, unions are, another money thing or whatever, but he walks the walk, talks the talk. So it's really good to see
I really appreciated that he walked with us 12 miles.
Nice.
I mean, none of the politicians, not anybody else that they would wait for us there at the district when we already had gone through the shit talking from the community, gone through all, like, that's where everyone has to come in.
The in-between.
So you can experience that.
Yeah.
Everybody they have the microwave mentality of like, let's get to the finish line. But the learning happens in the between.
Yeah.
And that's why I felt like, okay, well, you know what? He's here. He's in the trenches. That's important. That's real leadership to me. Now, I have to continue to get to know him for me to form, because it was just 2 days. Mm-hmm. You can't see how he makes decisions. But that to me was important.
Well, thank you for sharing your thoughts on that. And when you told me the story, I was, it also hurt me to hear that story, that people were saying like mean things. It's like, we're in a bad place and we definitely need to make a change, because going back to what I said earlier about aligning the interests of the community and the police, is that I feel like you should see the police officers rolling by and you give them a wave and you give them a friggin' thumbs up, or like, we're in this together, almost so much that the community actually wants to help. Like, I know it's dangerous, but even get involved in stopping crime. I know the way my dad taught me when I was growing up, like, he'd be over there helping. Like, if there was a violent criminal or something, like, on the loose, like, and the police officers needed a hand, like, that's the kind of teamwork and camaraderie we need, I feel we need, maybe not to that extreme, but at least the willingness to help, if nothing else, because there's a time when you're shorthanded and you're like, I feel like we've been conditioned in the society to taking a hands-off approach, and there's legal reasons for that, liability and all this, and I get it, but taking a hands-off approach, and it's like, you're watching this happen when you could be trying to help out when somebody's pinned down in a bad position or something like that. If you know it'd be simple to like do it without harming yourself or others, like, to be more actively engaged in that, like, where you're working on the same page, not against each other, not seen as enemies, because like, there's so much we can do together when we're working together. And I feel like if people got involved in that to help, like, that's the mentality I want. It's like almost like you're willing to like get in the fray and risk yourself physically to protect the community that you want.
Hey, this is, no, maybe we get into this. It sounds like the Nashville stabbing incident. We can get into that in another podcast.
For
There's
sure.
lots of material to go on there.
But I guess we'll kind of, so we did hit resilience. Any last like words about resilience? Anything that we want to cover? Anything from you want to mention that you didn't really get a chance to get out? Take a second to look that over and let us know.
Okay. I mean, there's a lot to say. Are we recording already?
Well, we've been recording for quite a while now.
Yeah.
Like, the break, I might edit it out or whatever,
Okay.
but once we got back
Okay.
into it,
Also,
we're
you
just gonna
kind
keep
of
it
just edit. Okay.
Well, I hate to do it because these things are fucking
I
long,
know
so
it's
then I
a
gotta
lot.
find it in there
I
where it's
know,
at. But
sorry.
no, it's no worries. But because I just wanted to make sure we fully flush these things out. I like that certainty and that wrapping up things in a nice little bow at the end. You told us about your story, and that's a specific example. And then you told us kind of where you're at in the process of getting into the police force. We interlaced with that whole conversation was a lot of self-care stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And I guess healing. I'm going to send you guys a link to a podcast with that guy from the Rogan podcast, which was on, and talks about why we develop certain coping mechanisms, things like that, and how to heal from childhood injuries. But we'll open it up to you ladies, because I think Matt and I are probably going to, if you want to stick around, you're welcome to. I think we're gonna wrap Ukraine and interest rates and all that stuff going on in just a bit, but I don't want to keep you around because I feel like the topics you brought, I don't want to keep you here if you don't have them. It's only almost 4 o'clock.
Yeah.
But we've delved into the topics that you guys brought to the table pretty well. But that's why I wanted to make sure if there's anything else that you wanted to add to it.
I think I wanted to end my topic with saying that I'm just there's no words to say that I really enjoy the experience of life as a whole. People always ask me, the people that know my story, like I will never change nothing that happened. I feel so grateful to even live and experience life, and to be able to love people, and to experience my family, and to experience even the bad things, like the people that were shouting at me, like, and even though I know that they don't know me, who I am, who Lizette is, but even those experiences are meaningful to me, and I can't wait to see like how I'm gonna continue to develop, how society is gonna develop. I really feel positive about what we're going through right now, as a nation, as the entire world, But I think better things are gonna come, and I'm excited to be a part of the growth, of the growing pains, of growth in general in my life and as a community. And I'm excited to see what's coming.
Yeah, in the worst of times, you can see that there's so much better that we can do, and I'm glad we connected, and I'm glad that that we have a lot in common, and that we're sharing this passion that you have. And I don't know if I'm gonna give you guys like a free like nugget here or something, but Tilsa used to have, we used to be part of a podcast that is, Cafecito con las Chingonas. Is that still ongoing just without you, or no?
I think they're changing it to Wine with Besties.
Okay, well, transition. Maybe it's kind of more mentally where they're at. But I would say for you guys, if you wanted to do one together, or like every once in a while do one, or just whatever. Maybe call it Next Level Chingonas, because I feel like that's who I'm dealing with here. I was impressed yesterday with Lizette. Like, she's getting ready to leave, and I was like, I'll walk you over to your motorcycle. It was an interesting thing to say. She's got on like a leather jacket. She's got on like her nice like boot shoes thing. She gets on this motorcycle like a fucking superhero out of a movie and fucking rides away. I'm like, that's a badass chick right there.
Thank you.
You know what I mean? I could see her making a left onto friggin' Archer Road, and I was like, wow. I'm like, how cool is she and how badass is she? She's just riding off on a motorcycle. You looked like a female version of the Terminator from friggin' Terminator 2. Like, Arnold Schwarzenegger, I'll be back, and he's riding the motorcycle. Like, she was just like so comfortable with what she was doing and just being a badass without even really trying too hard. So I thought that was really cool.
But that's because the confidence came through all of this. Mm-hmm. I think I would have looked, and I feel like it radiates from you because you didn't know anything about me yesterday, the details. But I think that's what happens, and I feel like when I have a lot of confidence in myself now because of everything I've been through. I was just having this conversation with my family the other day. I felt like, because we always talk about politics and how scary the world is, and my uncle asked me, he said, what about you? How do you feel? Because they all know that I live by myself, and I have my son, and then how are you dealing with things? And I tell them I'm ready for whatever comes. Because I am at the point in my life where nothing can break me. Mentally, physically, spiritually, like I'm ready for whatever. And I feel like that's the confidence that other people's, that I hope, right, that it brings inspiration to other people, because we really need to change. We really need to live with intention, be happy, love each other, and I really wish that things change sooner. They are, I feel it, but everybody needs to put their own little nugget of intention to fix things. Not just watch us on the side, say, oh, you guys are, I'm happy for you. I'm glad that you guys are standing up for what you believe in. But yet he's a little afraid to join us because he's scared. You know, like, that's what I mean by accountability. Like, you own up to your own accountability and say, you know what, I should be a part of this too. I should be a part of making this a better world, a better community for our children. Not just say there or complain, like, why is this not working? Or like how your friend, she was saying, oh, this is an inconvenience. Like,
you're interrupting our training.
Yeah, like,
to talk about
look at yourself.
People who are dying by suicide. That's pretty important.
So,
yeah, I think that's well said, and it is definitely one thing to just sit around and complain about stuff. It's talk is cheap. So says I on a podcast where we just talk for 3 hours. But
what I'm hoping to convey to people is the way reasonable people within the community talk about this thing and think about it, so that people have a framework of knowledge that they can use themselves too. And you know what? I do agree with that. I have that in common. I want that too. I want that goal, and I'm willing to work towards it. And there was a lot of different ideas and thoughts about how that can happen and what we need to do to achieve it. Like, spread that out there so that we've created an army of foot soldiers who are working toward the same goal, as opposed to just, a few. But the greatest changes will come when we're working together. So that's something we definitely have to work on. And I talk about, I have a little outro that I do, and I'll do it later because I'm not trying to be repetitive. But the one thing that I find is that, like, there's so much opportunity to make change in everyday life that you can do right in front of you all the time. And it's weird how, like, society has changed in the sense that you could walk down the street, and if you're just being nice because you happen to be nice, or you have kindness in your heart and you have this positivity overflowing, by coming on too strong when you're like, hey, how you smiling, like, almost like them, like, people, it takes people aback now almost. Like you always feel like, are they trying to sell me something, or are they trying to get something from me, or why are they being nice? Because in a lot of times, criminals use, they try to distract you and try to, gain trust with you so they can pull off some criminal bullshit or whatever. But my point is just, I saw a look on this young lady's face earlier. I think it might have been today or yesterday, whenever I was getting coffee and I was walking out of Dunkin' Donuts, and I was like, hey, how are you, and I let her know that I meant no harm and meant business, because I continued walking and stop and try to, like, holler, or something like that, right? Which probably happens all the time. But the point is just, it was weird to see that look of surprise, like, you care enough to say hello to me, or like, whoa, like, what are you up to, or whatever. It's like this weird surprise of
physical, personal interaction. What is this?
Yeah,
I don't understand. Does not compute.
Usually I'll try to keep it, like, short and sweet, to let them know that I am about my business. Like, I'm going to keep on moving along, but, like, hey, good morning, and then, keep on going. I feel like we need that. It's a basic thing that we can all do, but it's weird that we're at a place where people are surprised that you're doing that. It's like, I think, when did that change? Or
byproduct of the internet age. The internet age and going online. That's what I believe. That's contributed to sort of a melting of an old school kind of community. And so whereas people, when they interacted with each other back in, like, my grandparents' day, like, granted, this was way back in the day, they'd all go, like, to church together or whatever. The whole town would go to church together in a small southern town or whatever, and you knew everybody through your church or whatever, or, you grew up going to the park or whatnot, and you had physical interpersonal interactions. Now interactions are online. We even date online, which is kind of crazy when you think about it, as opposed to real physical space interaction. So it's just a societal shift we've had as a people, not even as a country, but beyond that, as the internet age, where people they interact so much through the internet and online connections, as opposed to actually, like, with their community. And as such, you see it with kids today in schools, like, they have online interactions and relationships and friendships, online gaming, everything is just and if you're Mark Zuckerberg, going to try to take us to the metaverse, where we basically, like, completely live online in a digital avatar, whatever insane shit they're cooking up to make more money. But that's a trajectory, and I don't think it's been good for communities. And we can maybe talk about another podcast how I believe that's led to extreme isolation with and created
Yes.
mass shooters and stuff. So I believe that's also a byproduct of the new shift to online. I don't think our brains are. I think like technology is essentially evolved so rapidly that it's outpaced our own ability to kind of cope and adapt with it. So,
because what we're interacting with is a supercomputer or a machine, but yet we are mere mortals. We are
It's
human beings.
non-human. Yeah, we're made to connect.
We weren't evolved to operate through these things. This is something new that we're going to have to grow and adjust to. And I think that's a topic that I wanted to flush out with maybe a psychology professor or something on this podcast about just what do we know now and where do we think it's going? Because I think we have a lot of damage to repair from cell phones. Because my saying is that the cell phone is the most powerful drug that we have that doesn't come with a warning label on it, right? So like you're not warned that like, you know, the physical effects is you can get nearsightedness, right? That's one thing. So apparently there's a whole generation of children or more that are growing up now with nearsightedness because they don't get outside and look at shit often enough. They're just looking at electronics. But then in terms of the social interactions and the byproducts of that, what studies, I would like to know what studies do we have now and what are they saying about what effect this is having, what effect, social effect, because there's obviously something, right? You just kind of alluded to it, how the actual cell phone itself is what changed society. But what are we going to do about it? Because I think that's well, basically what we have is a bunch of dopamine junkies, right? You get this dopamine hit from seeing that picture or seeing the likes that you got or the fucking, you know, what so-and-so is doing or when you talk to them through the phone. But it's like, that's fine when it's used as a method of communication. But what are the real-life consequences of that are? And, like, how are we going to better ourselves, use this to better ourselves instead of just use it to the point where people are depressed because their fucking dopamine is completely depleted because they burnt it out on the phone like a gambling addict at a fucking slot machine, right? Yeah. Until there's nothing more left. And then in real life, you're depressed then. Like, nobody taught people how to manage it, and I'm really big on, like, this is an issue that we're going to have to confront fucking head on. Because I said it before, when you used to get bullied at school, it would end at 2 p.m. or 3 p.m. and you would go home and you'd have a sanctuary where you'd be in your home and that was your safe place with mom and dad or whatever, your getaway. But now the shit follows you into, you're fat, you're a bitch, you're a fucking whore, you're this, you're that, if you're a guy, like you're a pussy, blah, blah, blah. It follows you into the home and you don't shut it off. How are we going to manage that? Because I believe that, you know, as parents and people going forward, it's our responsibility. Obviously, they don't care. The big money, big companies, the wealthy, they'll make money in whatever country it is or whatever. That's their job, is to maximize profit, to make money. But what are we going to do with the consequences and results that we deal with in everyday society? I think these are probably a net positive, but we need to learn how to manage them. I
just wonder, it's like we've been sold this bill of goods, like we need these apps, we need Facebook, we need Snapchat, we need Instagram. No, we actually don't. Is my opinion. We really don't need it. We've been sold all this shit that we actually do not need, and it's been sold as like a sort of a pillar of existing in modern society, and I just think it's bullshit, honestly. We've been sold, and then that kind of goes in line with just American consumerism, kind of how our culture is, but we really have a lot of shit we don't need, and I think people don't realize that actually, no, you really don't need Facebook. You can actually exist without it. It's a surprise.
It's a distraction,
people, but
instead of a net benefit, sometimes sometimes it's just a distraction.
I don't know how we reboot everyone's mental state. They're like, all this stuff I do online, I just sit around on my phone all day, and and it's tedious, right? You get, It's ADD inducing. It really is, because I get, I got the group me for my work.
Can't focus on a fucking task anymore.
I got the group me for my work text. I got the WhatsApp for my, so I have a group me for my company unit text. I have a WhatsApp for my battalion leadership text. Then I have multiple text streams and messages. Then I got the email. Then you got Snapchat. You got things on Snapchat. Then you got things of, it's like voicemails. It fragments the mind into so many places with so many avenues of information traffic. It's just the most ADD inducing. I think that produces anxiety too. When you're so many notifications all the time, bing, 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 you never fucking relax. You get notifications all the time. It's not good for the human psyche, and I think once we come to a realization as a people, we don't need all this shit that's being peddled on us by tech companies that I think we'll be healthier for it. But I mean, divorcing ourselves from it, it's like divorcing yourself from crack. Like, it's...
Well, that's another thing, because I'm going to say a real bold statement here.
Yeah.
We might not, as a society, might want to, like, not have children using this shit. You know, maybe these things aren't meant for kids. Have we ever even examined that fucking question? Because in my day, you know, my dad, he was an immigrant, and he came from Ireland, and he was all about knowledge and education, and I'm carrying on that torch right now, and bettering yourself through those things. And I remember when we got our first computer in 1996, and, you know, my dad always saved money. He was a hardworking immigrant, put money on the side in an account and all this. And he went out and he bought a good computer, and he did believe in, like, the things of the future, and don't, you know, being ahead with, try to get ahead and get in like an early adopter so that you're ready for it when it's a full-blown change. But he went out and he bought a really fucking expensive computer. They probably overcharged us back then. Fucking sales people at Best Buy must have been making great commissions, because he was selling us the best of everything or whatever. Compaq was the brand back then. But anyway, the point is just, he did it so that we could better ourselves, but we don't really know, like, should kids be using this? Their brains, like,
still forming.
On Rogan's podcast, they always say that brains are still forming until you're about 25 years old. Your cerebral cortex and all that shit is still forming. Like, maybe this is something that kids shouldn't have. And I know if Apple or fucking Facebook or Zuckerberg or any of them heard that, they probably fucking shit. No, don't say that. But maybe this is not something they're meant to have, man, because it's destructive to them at a young age when their brains aren't fully formed yet. Like, I joked around with my wife, I'm like, our kids are going to have flip phones. She's like, you know, they're going to get bullied for that. I'm like, I don't give a fuck. You know, when we talk about resilience, they're going to get stronger from that shit, because I've never seen the withdrawal from anybody as I've seen when a young teenager's phone was taken away from her. It was the most violent, bloody resistance I had ever heard. It was as if she had been raped. Like, that's how, like, you know what I mean? Or, like, she was in the middle of being, like, assaulted. It's the kind of a violent, panicky
It's an
outpour.
addiction. It's a crazy addiction.
Maybe they shouldn't have them, but that'll be a whole nother podcast we'll get into another day, because I would like to have somebody, I'm going to try to get people in, man, that have, like, degrees or have put time and study into this and research, because, like, honestly, I don't even know if kids should have them, to be honest with you. And even then,
a certain point.
These motherfuckers turn adults into children, too. Mm-hmm. There's so many side effects of this fucking thing, and we don't think about it that way because it's not something we're ingesting physically, but we're putting it into our mind, which is just as powerful. So anyway, that's all I got for right now. Me and Matt are probably still going to kick it, but what's up, ladies? How are we feeling here?
Yeah, I think I'm going to get going because I have a student next.
You're welcome back anytime. Tilsa's a co-host here.
Thanks for coming out. Yeah,
we love you guys and your perspectives, and thanks for joining us. It's it seems like something that you're into as well, so that's awesome. Always be thinking about new things you'd like to discuss, or new developments, or new things that come on with you and come on and talk to us about on the podcast.
Yeah, I think it would be a cool journey, like, to discuss my journey into law enforcement and see how things are changing or anything new that I can say, because I have to figure out what I can. I know once I'm in the academy, they're very limited. I can't have another job. I can't go out after a certain time. So they're very strict once you're in the academy. Yeah.
You can't have another job, or, like, what if you have a business?
Just during I guess you gotta...
You have to transfer it to somebody else's name.
Someone else take the reins for the time.
Just for now? While you're
just for now, for the 18-month period. Yeah, it's pretty strict in the academy. But so I would have to see if I can even say anything about the academy. Yeah. Which is, why wouldn't they want? I mean, if you're doing everything how it's supposed to be, you shouldn't care. Yeah.
Well, thank you for being here. Thank you for your time. Thank you for sharing your thoughts, everybody.
Thank you guys. Yes.
Oh, yeah.
And good luck with your next topics.
For sure. It's gonna be a long one today.